Okay, we're going to call this meeting of the Lawndale City Council to order. We want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I'm going to ask the city clerk to give us the roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Osborne.
Here.
Councilmember Suarez.
Present.
Councilmember Kearney.
Here.
Councilmember Reed.
Here.
Mayor Pullen Miles.
Here.
All present.
Okay. Next, we want to have our flag salute and our Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to ask Councilmember Daniel Reed to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're going to have Pastor, okay, here we go. Pastor Sharice Sidaki, there you go, from the House to the Restoration Life Christian Church. She's going to lead us in a word of inspiration, and I'm going to ask you guys to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right, please rise, place your right hand over your heart, and repeat along with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing.
Would you bow your heads with me? Father God, we just come to you and we thank you for your goodness tonight. God, we know that you are King of Kings and you are Lord of Lords. You are sovereign over everything that happens in this place tonight, Father. We know that your word says in Psalms 133 how good and how pleasant it is for God's people to live in unity together, God. And that is our prayer tonight. That is our plea, that the beautiful people of the city of Lawndale could live shoulder to shoulder in unity with one another, laying aside differences and just loving and being unified together as one people. God, we ask that you would place a shield of protection over your citizens in this place, that you would provide prosperity and protection for every person that lives in the city of Lawndale, Father, and a special shield of protection over its law enforcement that keeps us safe. God, we just ask that you would provide inspiration over the leadership of this place. God, that you would empower them to make the best possible choices, that you would give them the integrity that's needed to hold position and just make the best choices overall for its people that reside in this city. God, we thank you for everything that you've done in this city and everything that you're going to do in this city to keep it prosperous and beautiful. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Shidaki, for those words of inspiration. Okay, next on our agenda is our public safety report. We're going to ask our captain, our lieutenant, rather, to give us the public safety report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm here tonight to present the public safety report for March 18th through March 31st. On March 21st, about 5 p.m., Deputy Tony Lomedico was flagged down by a security officer at Lawndale High School. The officer pointed to a vehicle directly ahead of Deputy Lomedico and told him that the occupants had just identified themselves as gang members and were intimidating the students. Deputy Lomedico also noticed that there was vehicle code violation on the car. He conducted a traffic stop to warn or cite the driver. Upon contacting the driver, he saw the driver had marijuana on his lap. As he had the driver exit, the passenger fled. Deputy Medical noticed that the passenger had a firearm in his waistband. At that point, he made a quick decision to initiate a foot pursuit on the armed male. He chased the male and broadcast his location. He ultimately lost visual of the suspects. However, the responding deputies Paz and Shintaku, who had been responding, saw the suspect run between two houses and attempted to hide. They were able to take him to custody without further incident. Deputy Lomedico responded to the location, positively identified the person with who ran from him, who had the handgun, and they arrested him. He was the male was an admitted gang member. The firearm was not located. He did lose sight of him, so the deputy did conduct a search, but they were unable to find the firearm. Also, at that time, the driver and the vehicle had fled the location also. The vehicles identified and the drivers identified. This investigation is still ongoing for them. Also, on March 23rd, approximately at 9:30 p.m., Deputy Christopher Lenardi responded to the 4500 block of Larch Avenue regarding the man with the gun call. The call was updated stating that the suspect had left in a vehicle and he was driving towards Rosecrans Avenue. Deputy Leonardi attempted to locate the vehicle and saw it entering into the parking lot of 7-Eleven. He detained both occupants pending the firearm investigation. Also, assisting units responded to the informant, the person who made the phone call, and learned that she was a victim and that her boyfriend had just assaulted her, and her friend, the other male, had pointed a handgun at her. At that point, the victim was transported to where they were detaining the two males, and the victim was also able to positively identify her boyfriend who just assaulted her and the friend of the boyfriend who pointed a handgun at her. Both suspects were placed under arrest for domestic violence and assault with a deadly weapon. And also on March 24th in the evening, deputies responded to the 16200 block of Inglewood Avenue pending a burglary now call. The informant stated that the disturbing party was her ex-boyfriend who should not be at the house. Deputies detained the male matching description in front of the complex. And it was determined later that a burglary did not occur. It was a boyfriend-girlfriend verbal disagreement, and the boyfriend was actually a resident there who had lived with her for the past 3.5 years. There was some damaged property inside the residence. The deputies told the informant that this was more of a civil matter. The informant, she became upset, she cursed at the deputies, and punched Deputy Sino in the mouth. Deputies were detained her and arrested her for battery on a police officer. Also, this weekend we had a couple of vehicle break-ins, actually unlocked vehicles. So we just asked residents, if you can talk to residents, to secure their vehicles. They just opened unlocked vehicles and took the small items inside the vehicle. And this concludes my report. I'll be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you for that report. Are there any questions of the lieutenant's
No
report?
questions. Thanks for the service.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that report, sir.
Thank
Thank you. Item number D, items from the city clerk's department. Madam
Thank
City
you,
Clerk.
Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make an announcement that the city website now has links to the Facebook page and the YouTube channel. Like or share our pages to receive information on upcoming events and highlights of the city. The YouTube channel is also a great place to catch up on the latest and the best of everything Lawndale. If you have any questions regarding this, please feel free to contact the city clerk's office and we'll help you out.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Before we continue our agenda, I want to make note that we have an anniversary here today. Tiffany Israel is our city attorney, and she's celebrating 12 years with us here in the city of Lawndale. Tiffany Israel is doing a marvelous job. Let's give her a round of applause. And happy anniversary.
April Fools?
Yeah, have anything you want to say about how nice it is to work with such a wonderful council? Anything like that?
I can't believe it's already been 12 years. The time has flown by, and I enjoy working with all of the staff and the council very much. Thank you.
That's the shortest speech I ever wrote.
Was that your April Fool's joke, Robert?
The 12
no,
years
it's
part.
it's
The 12 years part. I'm much too young to have worked here for 12 years.
12 years today.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Okay, moving our agenda along, we are now under oral communications. Oral communications or public comments is where you have the opportunity to speak to this body, being the Lawndale City Council, on items that are not on the agenda. If you'd like to speak to the Lawndale City Council on items that are not on the agenda, we ask that you line up by the flag when it becomes your turn. If you come to the podium, if you will start with your name first, at about 2 minutes, the amber light will come on and it'll give you the signal to start wrapping things up. Are there any wishing to speak on the oral communications? These glasses are terrible. It's like a fog in here.
Pam London, 171st. I would just like to thank all the residents for not mowing their lawns so that I can look at the weeds through their knees, and just pray that someday they get a clue, because it looks like crap.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Hello there, Johnny London, 171st. On that same note, I was just wondering, is there a chance that code enforcement for maybe, say, 2 months could be proactive and go around and look at all these houses that are overgrown for the residents in this town that do take care of their houses? You know, it's kind of an eyesore to see, especially if it's next to you. I'm sure you don't appreciate that. So I'm wondering, just on a trial basis, let code enforcement be proactive instead of reactive, and that way it's not pitting neighbor on neighbor. And then also on that, on the homes with the affordable, the buildings, and they get to build and they have to have so much affordable housing. I don't know, is there any way that we could stipulate that that property that is affordable housing has to stay that way for as long as that building stands, so that in 5 years, 10 years, whatever, they can't sell it at market value along with the other people who had to pay full price? So just wondering if there's any way we could do something about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Randall Labor, 171st Street. One real quick comment. I appreciate the city clerk making the announcement about social media and the YouTube channel and the information on the YouTube channel, but why aren't the council meetings put on the YouTube channel too? So if I don't go to the meeting today, I could watch it tomorrow on YouTube. I don't have cable. A lot of people don't have cable anymore, so I think it would be fairly easy to post the council meetings on the YouTube channel. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there anyone else wishing to speak to this council? Okay, seeing none, we will close public comments and bring it up to the diocese for any comments by the council. Let's start with Councilmember Daniel Reed.
All righty, thank you very much, everyone who spoke and those who came out tonight. I'm going to touch on the last one there in regards to the YouTube channel. Correct me if I'm wrong, Steve. Did we not make arrangements to put recording meetings on the YouTube, or is that still a future
That
item?
is in the works right now as we speak, but is something in the past that has not been done.
So it's something that we are actually working
It's
on.
already in the process.
That's what I wanted. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Pat Kern.
I just have one on Johnny's second part of your question. I'll ask our planning director, what about affordable housing? It can stay that way until owner occupier sells it?
Yeah, so if someone is approved through an affordable housing project through the city, we put restrictive use covenants on it, so it holds it in place for affordability, or whatever the requirements. So if they file for a density bonus, for example, then that has to meet the minimum requirements pursuant to state law, county requirements, and the city's ordinance.
So it stays as long as the owner.
That's correct.
Okay. If I could add, it's not forever.
It's not
It's
forever.
usually for 25 or a certain
There's a
number of
time
years,
limit, yeah.
but it is decades.
So it's 25 years?
It depends on if it's a density bonus or if it's certain grant funding. There are different things that can make it between 25 and 55 years.
Okay.
That's my question. I'll pass it on to the lady to my right.
Councilwoman Suarez.
Well, I think you both got the bulk of it, so I'm just gonna pass it along to the next, or Mayor.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Osborne. Okay, that's pretty much exhausted, and thank you, Madam City Attorney, for clarifying that. I knew it wasn't in perpetuity, but I'm glad you was able to let us know this for approximately 25 to 50 years, depending on the mechanism that caused it to be affordable housing from the start. But thank you for that question, and that's all I have. With that, we will close public comments and comments from the council, and we will continue with item G, number 1. Actually, this is a consent calendar, sorry about that, a consent calendar which includes the 4 items. What is the pleasure of this body concerning the consent calendar?
If there's no changes or additions, I'll make a motion to accept the consent calendar as written.
Okay.
And I'll second that motion.
Thank you. So the motion has been made by Kearney that we approve the consent calendar and Suarez seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, will the council please vote on the consent calendar?
Motion approved unanimously.
Thank you. Item number 5 is a public hearing to establish rules regarding shared mobilized scooter devices. Let's have the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, members of the audience, bringing this item to you for a full regular ordinance. As the council recalls, we brought an urgency ordinance forward for adoption, and as well as a 45-day, as well as a 10-month, 15-day to extend the moratorium. Staff has now worked with MSD and the city attorney's office and drafted regulations that you have attached to the staff report. We've been working with MSD. They've confiscated a few of these vehicle mobile devices throughout the city. The councils may have seen them. We've found them on parkways, public areas, and other areas throughout the city that we attached in the staff report. Basically, this only regulates the use on leaving them on the public right-of-way, not banning them as they ride through. They'd have to meet the California Vehicle Code requirements. This ordinance sets forth those requirements for leaving them and abandoning them, because we currently do not have any regulations outside the moratorium. So these are regular regulations that will regulate them. Of course, as things change in the mobility, shared mobility, we'll probably bring more updates as they go and state law changes or whatnot, or if we hear some more feedback. But as of right now, this concludes staff's report. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Okay, are there any points of clarification needed of the staff report?
No, we went through this before, so I think it's pretty well covered.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so we'll take some testimony from any of those who would like to testify in this matter. At this time, it is 6:49. I'm going to open up the public hearing. I'm going to ask anyone who'd like to testify in this matter if they stand and be sworn in by the city attorney. Okay, seeing none, we will not take any testimony, and at 6:49, we will close the public hearing and we'll bring it up to the council for discussion.
I'll make a motion for approval unless there's.
I'll second it.
No need for any more discussion?
I have no
Let's make sure
objections.
first. Okay, so the motion's been made for approval by Osborne and seconded by Councilman Daniel Reed. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the council please vote?
Would you like me to read the title?
Yes,
first,
ma'am,
Mr.
I'd like
Mayor?
to. Thank you.
This is ordinance number 1157-19, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lawndale, California, adding Lawndale Municipal Code Chapter 12.64, establishing rules and regulations on shared mobility devices. Thank you.
Okay, will the council please vote?
Motion approved unanimously.
Thank you. Now, item number 6, under administration, the city council policies concerning small cell wireless facilities. Let's have a staff report.
Mr. Mayor, Lana Lehman, our deputy city attorney, will be presenting that
Thank you.
tonight.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for this opportunity. We will be talking about 2 ordinances. They are actually the same ordinance, but you will be adopting the same ordinance via 2 separate procedures. One, an urgency procedure, and one, your regular first reading, second reading, and then 30-day process. In addition, we are recommending the adoption of a policy that is authorized by that ordinance. This is coming from a FCC order that was adopted on September 27 of 2018. It dramatically changed the landscape of small wireless facilities and how they can be regulated by cities. And it also implemented very short time frames for cities to adopt policies and new ordinances, new aesthetic standards and design standards for compliance with the FCC order. Now, I do want to clarify, we're primarily dealing here with small cells in the public right-of-way. That is what the FCC order primarily attaches to. There is some ambiguity in the law at this point in time with regard to that, but we will absolutely have to circle back at some point in time and revisit the city's regulations of the zoning code with regard to antennas and wireless facilities on private property. So what is a small wireless facility? I'm going to give you the extremely abbreviated summary. We're basically talking about structures that are less than 50 feet and include less than 28 cubic feet in equipment. And we're also talking about antenna panels that are less than 3 cubic feet. The trend that we are seeing and the trend that the industry is going towards is that most incoming applications probably will qualify, very much likely will qualify as small wireless facilities, or as we like to call them, SWIFers, under the new FCC order. They will be in residential neighborhoods. These are basically gap fillers for between your larger towers, your larger carriers. They have about a 400-foot range. They are aimed at trying to increase bandwidth capacity, as opposed to just, we're not talking about mere cell coverage anymore. We're talking about bandwidth capacity in residential areas and areas that may not have the best cell coverage in terms of data carriage at this point in time. An important term under the new FCC order is the term shot clocks. Basically what they are is that they are deadlines for wireless application processing. They are a time frame in which the city must make a decision, a final decision, like an as-built, ready-to-go decision for these small wireless facilities and modifications to wireless facilities. And if you do not meet the shot clock deadline, as they are actually even called by the FCC, it's not just for basketball, you have a presumptive violation of federal law. Now you can rebut that presumption, but you really want to create a process by which you meet those FCC shot clock deadlines. The new FCC order creates very short shot clocks for small wireless facilities. It's basically 60 days for attachments to existing structures, 90 days for new structures. I want to be clear that that is inclusive of any appeal period. It's also inclusive of any encroachment permits that they need to get, any traffic control plans that they need to get, any building permits that they need to get. So when you subtract back from those two 60 or 90-day shot clocks, you're really dealing with a very, very short time frame that the federal government has imposed upon the city. And what that means in reality is that the shot clocks are so short that a discretionary hearing process is no longer practical. We can't fit it in. We can't fit it in under the Brown Act. We can't fit it in under our typical noticing. So we have created and we're proposing under the ordinances that we're presenting to you tonight a whole new administrative process that is handled internally. So what types of design standards can we still impose? The FCC dramatically changed the foundation of Ninth Circuit law in terms of how we can regulate our aesthetics under we used to have this least intrusive means standard. That's what your ordinance was based upon, was that assumption that you could require the least intrusive means. The FCC has come back and said, no, no more least intrusive means. Now the rule is that thou shalt not materially inhibit a small wireless facility. And the new standards, as I mentioned before, it completely rewrites legal standards, which means we needed a complete rewrite of your ordinance. Your city's aesthetic standards need to be, number one, reasonable. Number two, non-discriminatory as between carriers. So non-discriminatory as between AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, Sprint, etc. And they need to be objective and pre-published. And I really want to put some emphasis on the term pre-published. Because what the FCC's rule in terms of the new aesthetic standards, it takes effect on April 14, 2019. Hence, we are bringing this forward in a rather quick and unusual fashion. The pre-publication, we should put it on our website. And we are also proposing a policy so that you can quickly adapt your changes as the law changes and the technology changes. In terms of more with respect to what design standards we can continue to do, you'll recall, I'm just going to go back real quick, you'll recall that the first element here was that the aesthetic standards need to be reasonable. What does that mean? The FCC tells us that aesthetic requirements that are reasonable in that they are technically feasible and reasonably directed to avoiding or remedying the intangible public harm of unsightly or out of character deployments. So what we have is we actually have a situation where the law is still unclear. This is very new territory. There will be further clarification, I'm sure, that's going to come through either further legislation or through litigation that is already pending in the courts. For the current time, once an application is deemed complete, when you take the shot clock together with this new FCC ruling, there's very little room for staff to issue a denial of one of these applications, and especially if that applicant can demonstrate that they are proposing the most technically feasible means of deployment, or that they cannot meet the conditions of approval that we are trying to impose, that our conditions are technically infeasible. So, I mentioned the April 14 date prior. We need to have standards published by April 14. We can change them afterwards. Technically, we can adopt them afterwards. However, if you get a application in before that date and you don't have your standards in place, they are not enforceable because they are not pre-published. So what we are proposing is an urgency ordinance, and also running that in parallel with a regular ordinance. That's your first, second reading plus 30 days ordinance. Given that there is pending litigation, possibly pending legislation, we are also proposing that as part of that ordinance, and this is all built into the ordinance, that a policy is adopted by resolution so that the city can change aesthetic standards as quickly as possible as the law changes or as the technology changes. So I have personally been saying for many years that the technology changes much faster than the law does. So I would be happy to read the ordinance titles. You are being proposed with an introduction, first reading of ordinance number 1159-19 to amend municipal code title 12.60 to regulate small wireless facilities, SCWF, in the public right-of-way and determine the project is not subject to the California Environmental Quality Act. The title of that ordinance is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lawndale, California, adding Chapter 12.60 of the Lawndale Municipal Code to regulate wireless telecommunications facilities in the public right-of-way and finding of exemption from CEQA. I would recommend that that would be the first motion taken.
Okay, before we take that first motion, let's see if there's any discussion to make sure everyone's pretty clear on what we're trying to accomplish here, or what we face.
I think I'm clear. I'm clear.
And we should also take public comment as well.
No,
I just want to say,
go ahead.
you know, I perfectly understand why we're doing this. We've done these types of things time and time again. But my comment would be, this is just one more example of the endless occurrences of government above the city level taking away local control from the people. That's what this is, just endlessly happening. I can appreciate staff's efforts in doing this in the quick order that's being proposed. But again, we just see this endless dissolution, I guess is the word, of local control. And it really irritates me, and I'm sure it does others when they understand this. But that's all I'll say for now.
Okay, with that, let's have, should we adopt the motion first, or have a public comment on this section first?
Public comment, please.
Okay. Are there any wishing to speak on a public comment on this section of our proposal? You can do it all at one time if you like, yes.
Good evening, thank you, Mayor Pullen Miles, and good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Osborne, and council members, city manager, and community development director. I'm John Heffernan. I'm with AT&T's External Affairs team, and appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. You know, I heard the presentation. I think your team did a good job of kind of explaining at a high level what's happening. And there's some history also in addition to the recent FCC ruling, right? So you'll remember back in 1996, there was a telecommunications order. You know, so there have been a lot of things that have been happening for decades to help promote infrastructure and to help promote the network that's needed as people get on their computers and then now use phones to make calls, use phones to text, and now we know that they use phones basically to watch streaming video. So the demand has steadily increased. You received a letter from our legal team earlier today because they review these ordinances as they come up in municipalities literally across the country. So there were some items noted in that letter where our folks think that there's a need for some revisions. So obviously we recognize and appreciate the city stepping up and addressing the changes in recent state and federal law. And it's interesting to note there's a study that shows that 70% of Americans now are either exclusively or primarily relying on wireless telecommunications. So I mentioned the Telecom Act of 1996. That one goes back decades, but really it was to direct municipalities across the country that they need to take action on telecommunications applications within a reasonable period of time. And to be honest with you, the City of Lawndale has been great to work with. As part of the government relations team, external affairs, I support my network colleagues, the ones that show up with permit applications, work with the staff, and get their permits and get the infrastructure built. And there's a great working relationship there. I mentioned some history. Also in 2012, there was a congressional act that had a section 6409, and we refer to it within the industry as 6409 modification. So if there's an existing site that doesn't have a substantial change to the size or amount of equipment there, that should be a fast track approval. So the ordinance itself, in the letter, you saw that there were 9 items highlighted that our team had concerns with. In the ordinance, there were 12 items, and I appreciate the comments that this is coming through as a policy, a resolution, so adjustments and revisions can be made. And then in the ordinance itself, I believe there was 12 items listed there. So those are just wanted to highlight the communication that you had received previously. And again, we appreciate the working relationship we have with Director Morris is phenomenal to work with, and we know that you want to manage the infrastructure in the city to support the residents, support your businesses, but 5G is coming, Internet of Things, it's just the demand on the network is only going to increase as emerging technologies come to the marketplace. So by addressing the items we raise and continuing the conversation on future revisions, I think the City of Lawndale will go a long way towards encouraging continued investment and more deployments consistent with state and federal policies to benefit not only your residents, but the businesses in town. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for those comments. Okay, seems like that's all wishing to speak under public comments. Before we entertain a motion on the adoption of the urgency ordinance, right? You looking for that one first, right?
So at this point in time, I just introduced the first reading of the regular ordinance and read that ordinance by title.
Okay, so it's already been read by title. Is there we need a motion though to adopt such?
So moved.
So
Second.
the motion's been made by Reed and second by Pat Kearney that we adopt the regular ordinance. Make sure I'm clear. That's ordinance number 1159-19 that you're speaking of as the regular ordinance, right? Okay.
Robert, before
that
you
is
vote, I have
correct.
one comment.
Okay, is there any comments or discussion?
I do. And I'm going to vote for it. I'm going to support it because I understand it. And I guess it's a case of the best we can kind of do, just to ensure we have some sort of protections. But you can sympathize if you're a resident and then henceforth in a year's time or more, you have one of these parked out in the parkway in front of your house or perhaps in the back alley, wherever it's public right away. So you got to be prepared for that. It's not something the city is pushing, but that's just the way the future is. So that's all I could say.
Yeah, and I would say that we see ourselves under the unfortunate situations. And of course, I have some concerns about small cell towers in and of itself, but those concerns, from what I understand, are not able to be addressed pursuant to federal regulations, more specifically health and safety concerns, which is not germane to this particular ordinance. It's outside of that, but I still have those concerns. But with that being the case, we are in a position of where, like the representative said, that more and more people are using these devices, and this technology is not going away. And how we respond to it is we are responding to federal. This time it's federal, exactly, as opposed to the state regulations that's imposing these types of takeaway from local control. And with that be the case, we have to do the best we can within the confines in which we have to deal with.
Right, so we have some guidelines.
Yes. If there are any other further discussions on it before we take the vote on the motion. Okay, so the motion's been made in second. The council please vote on the ordinance.
Motion approves unanimously.
Okay, please continue.
And the second recommended motion would be adoption of urgency ordinance 115819, including the urgency findings, including therein, to read by title. That ordinance reads, an urgency ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lawndale, California, adding Chapter 12.60 of the Lawndale Municipal Code to regulate wireless telecommunications facilities in the public right-of-way and finding an exemption from CEQA.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion to adopt the urgency ordinance?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion's been made by Pat Kearney. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Councilor Bosforez. If you look at her long enough, she'll second it for you. Thank you, Councilwoman. Is there any further discussion on the urgency ordinance? Okay, will the council please vote on the urgency ordinance? And this requires, what percentage does it require, Madam City Attorney?
4/5.
4/5, okay, thank you.
Should have voted no.
There you go.
Motion approved unanimously.
Okay, please continue.
The third motion would be to adopt resolution number CC 1904-019 to approve the corresponding city council policy number 103-19 for design standards applicable to small wireless facilities. I don't need to read that by title.
Yeah. Okay, what is the pleasure of this body concerning adopting the resolutions, adopting the city policy? Okay, since she stared at me, I guess I will make the motion that we adopt the resolution corresponding to the city council policies.
I'll second it. I'll second it.
Okay, and seconded by Mr. Pat Kearney. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the council please vote?
4/5 again?
No, simple majority.
How's that?
Motion approved unanimously.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Yes, ma'am, please continue.
And then finally, any direction that you want to give Public Works staff to amend the master fee schedule to establish application fees and penalty fees for small wireless facilities. There are some very specific parameters that the FCC set in its new order with regard to what types of permit fees you can impose and limits upon those permit fees. It will require some level of study and review by staff. And we would be happy to hear any direction you could give or just provide direction to staff to move forward with that analysis.
Well, I would like to see some discussion or some type of information on what we could possibly look at in terms of the master fees. I don't know if I missed that, but I don't know what are our options there in terms of the master fees?
That was not in the PowerPoint presentation, but I can tell you that with respect to one-time fees, permit fees that you get up front, what you can charge pursuant to the FCC order are actual and reasonable costs. So if, for example, you have some cities that have a program in place where they take a deposit up front and they subtract back from that deposit with an actual receipt that the applicant receives, and anything that's not expended from that deposit is returned to them. You have other cities that are attempting at this point in time to do some sort of fee study and review of, what are these applications entailing in terms of staff time, outside consultant time, city attorney time, and trying to call it a mini fee study.
Yeah, I'd like to see that, just so at least that, so we can have some type of basis in which to go from, like, so we can decide what the quote unquote fair market value is. Other than that, I mean, I have no idea what the application fee should be, the master fee should be, or what have you. I heard that it's as few as $290. I don't know where I got that number from, but I read that in some report somewhere that it's charging $290 for each permit or
Mr. Mayor, it would be similar to the fees that we brought forward to the council for consideration last year. They would be based on the time and materials and the staff would perform to process the application. They could be a deposit or a flat fee, similar to what we did last year for community development. I don't know what that would be because they would have to do the nexus study and perform those actual actuarities that they can determine that and bring it forward for consideration at a later time.
Has staff any guesstimate, just wild guesstimate at the number of these things that are going to come into the city within, let's say, the next 2 years?
As the council knows, our current ordinance allowed, it was kind of bifurcated. Community development ran them all and then sent them over to, if they were in the public right of way. So right now we've had about 20 plus applications. We think, we're not sure if they're waiting in the side there, if they're gonna, after the 14th, we've heard, flood us with them, is what we've heard.
10 times.
But we have heard that Lawndale is flat, so we may not get as many as other cities.
No obstructions.
And we don't have as much, but we anticipate more coming, and we have been processing
So a
them.
fair guess, Sean, might be within the next 2 years, 50 of these things are around town?
I've talked to Mobility, they said they might have another 10 for us. Castle said maybe another 100, just depending, because they're having problems with the adjacent jurisdictions where they can't cite them. So they want to put them on our side. I've talked to Ms. Lehman many times throughout the months on this situation, and so we've just been working and processing them as fast as we can as they come in.
Well, I'd go for maximum fees.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, but, and with that, I would suggest that we have that nexus, study, so we can see whatever the.
I believe it's
maximum fee-
required under state law, we have to perform a time and materials based on
Right.
and then bring it forward.
So that sounds like something that we could bring back, or do we don't have to decide that today without?
That's correct. I mean, that's the recommendation before you. It's just to give staff any direction that you have in terms of moving forward with that
One
type
other
of
just quick
nexus study.
question, you know, we have a lot of schools in town, and there are some, as Robert was alluding to, some health and safety concerns. What are the guidelines when it comes to school sites?
So what I can say with respect to health risk and RF emissions issues, the FCC has entirely preempted
That's what I feared.
all local government input and consideration of that
That's exactly what I
issue.
feared.
In fact, there are even cases coming out of federal circuits that talk very specifically about the fact that a discussion of health and safety issues between an audience member, for example, and a commission member, if you're before the planning commission, can call it poison the well in terms of the record. It is that preempted.
Well, let me
No
ask,
surprise there. We went through that the last time we went
I just
through
wonder
our
if the school
recommendation.
districts are aware of what potential could be happening.
yes.
You have these out in the schoolyard.
Let me ask you this, when you say the public right of way, I was working on this issue in another community that I work with. And they have, to their chagrin, they woke up at some point and discovered one of these small towers on a telephone pole. And I assume that it's probably Edison, or maybe it's Department of Water and Power, on the easement. If they have an easement and it's a public, utilities pole, would that be considered a public right-of-way? So, in other words, what is the definition of a public right-of-way for as this ordinance is concerned?
Actually, most of your public right-of-ways are actually, at least in my experience, owned in easement as opposed to fee, unless you know otherwise. Okay, so most of them are in easement, and there is a definite definition of public right-of-way. It is a strip of land acquired by reservation dedication, which means oftentimes that we need to go back to the original annexation maps, the original dedication maps, if you're looking at a subdivision maps. Prescription, condemnation, or easement that allows for the passage of people and goods. The public right-of-way includes, but is not necessarily limited to, streets, curbs, gutters, sidewalks, roadway medians, and parking strips. The public right-of-way does not include lands owned, controlled, or operated by the city for uses unrelated to streets or passage of people and goods, such as, without limitation, your city parks, city hall, community center lands, city yards, and lands supporting reservoirs, water towers, police or fire facilities, and non-publicly accessible utilities.
So the least sheriff's substation is exempt?
From public
it's-
right-of-way definition,
Yeah.
as I've defined it,
Yeah,
yes.
they'll be happy to hear that.
And with that also, the fire department,
Correct.
station
Right, 'cause
house.
we had that
battled
issue.
that a few years ago.
Exactly.
A
The-
similar
The
issue.
idea is that if you have, say, a city park or city hall, that is, you're exercising a proprietary right. You're an owner. You're not, it's not public right of way. You are the actual
Right.
owner of that property. You should be able to have the right to act as a landlord with respect to facilities in those types of areas, until the FCC tells us otherwise.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it sounded like the answer was yes to my question, because if the telephone poles, it was either an easement or it was dedicated, more than likely during the process of developing the community or what have you. And as long as they got the permission from Edison or Department of Water and Power, then it's pretty much a done deal. The residents can't really affect it, can't
And
reject it.
we're a
I should say.
majority of residential parkways, so anybody that has a parkway in their
This is in
property
their backyard.
could have this thing.
Yeah.
Or we're also a city of a lot of alleys, so you could have it in the alleyway as well. But
Okay.
Sean's estimation, so there's probably going to be 100 or more people having this thing pop up in their front yard.
Yeah. Okay, so so that would be the direction of the council, that you bring back like a nexus study where we can kind of look at the master fees and the application fees.
Correct.
Okay, is that okay? Without objection, we'll make that the order. Okay, what else you have for us? Is that it?
I think
Is that it?
that's it. I believe, do we
That's
need
it.
a motion and a second for directing Public Works staff to amend the analyze and amend the master?
Do we need a motion for that? Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for that presentation. We're now under item number 7, concerning the general plan annual progress report.
Thank you, Mr.
Sir.
Mayor, council, members of the audience. So this is our general, our annual progress report that we bring to you every year. This one's especially sensitive because of the state's position on housing. As the council knows, there's a lot of preemption going on, and we need to get this report. Actually, if this is adopted tonight and recommended forward, I will go back and submit it tonight because it's due today. The item covers our general plan, which has 9 elements. It also addresses our regional housing needs. I'll just be general and talk about some of the things in the report. We had over 4,089 recorded visits to the Community Development Department, 140 approved site plans, 875 building permits were issued. The Planning Commission approved a 71-unit hotel. We also are in the process in escrow of selling the former redevelopment site over on Manhattan Beach and Hawthorne Boulevard. The city revised its accessory dwelling unit ordinance and standards in compliance with state law. The city also adopted a creation of easements by covenant so we can encourage development, joint developments between properties. The city initiated a specific plan amendment to encourage larger lot coverage on a Hawthorne Boulevard specific plan, so that it reduced requirements, impediments, and encouraged more development, mixed uses. The city also adopted Environmental Quality Act guidelines and a number of roadway improvements, which were all related to community development block grants. The project has been found to be exempt under CEQA. Last week, the Planning Commission recommended to the City Council to forward it for consideration. The City Attorney's Office has approved the resolution. There are no fiscal impacts, and staff recommends that the City Council, by motion, adopt the General Annual Progress Report and direct staff to submit the report to the Governor's Office of Planning and Research and Housing and Community Development, also known as HCD, in compliance with Government Code 65400. This concludes staff's report. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time. Thank you.
Just one question of clarification. So is this the same process of having our housing element certified?
No,
That's
but
no
it
different?
does help with so HCD is looking at our regional allocation and how we're moving and progressing towards that, meeting those requirements. So this is very important that it's always been important, but especially now with the new administration and where the legislature is going with, housing needs, meeting housing needs. So this is a key component of our housing element, yes.
Okay.
And I just want to note on the back, we have Recently, the city attorney's office did forward us a memo on our set-aside funds. I think we're getting close to exceeding it. We need to figure out where to apply that extra 20% set-aside that we now get back. So we'll be working on a project, either moving that, for finding a project that can meet the requirements, or maybe even working with the county housing department and moving those funds over, for those set-aside funds for the use, maybe for something in Lawndale, like for Section 8 or something like that, so.
Okay, set aside for
Set
affordable
aside.
housing.
Right.
Okay, all right. Are there any other any questions?
Nope.
I had no questions, so I'll make a motion that we
okay.
approve.
Okay, so the motion's been made by Flores that we approve.
I'll second it.
Staff recommendation is seconded by Mr. Reed. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, with the council vote, you don't need to read anything, right? Yeah, okay. Council, please vote.
Motion approved unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you for that report. Item number J, and item letter J. City Manager's report.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, council members, I'd like to take tonight to introduce our new Director of Finance and City Treasurer, Marla Pendleton. Marla's sitting up there next to Sean.
Welcome, Marla.
And I want to let you know, Marla began her professional career in finance working for the accounting firm of Deloitte & Touche. She was a certified public accountant, specializing in auditing government and nonprofit entities. From there, Marla worked for the County of Riverside, and most recently, she worked for the City of Palm Springs as the Assistant Finance Director and the Interim Director of Finance and Treasurer. Marla has experience in revenue and tax collections, accounts payable and receivable, payroll, budget, grants, internal and external billing, debt management, and audit reviews. Marla has an associate degree in accounting from Riverside City College and her bachelor's degree in business administration from California State Polytechnic University at Pomona. She is a licensed certified public accountant with 31 years of accounting, auditing, and budgeting experience, and we're very pleased to have Marla as part of the team, and we welcome her to the city of Lawndale. Thank you.
Welcome again. Welcome. All right, welcome. Okay, that concludes your report?
Yes.
All right. Okay, items from the council members. Let's have Daniel Reed first.
Attended 2 meetings since the last council meeting, Contract Cities downtown Los Angeles, in a wonderful 1926 building with the Tom Bradley Room. Very nice view, nice history with that. So business moving on as usual there. And I also attended the PTA Volunteer Awards Dinner this past week. And that's all.
Okay, Councilman Pat Kearney.
I also attended the PTA Volunteer Awards Dinner with Councilman Reed, and I attended the State of the District from the Central Valley High School District with Mayor Robert Polo Miles, Councilwoman Perez Suarez, and myself. And with that, I'll pass it on to my right.
You attended with yourself, huh?
Took you to our loop.
Okay, Councilwoman Suarez.
Yes, so I attended the State of the Districts, as Councilmember Kearney stated. It was very interesting to hear one of the issues that the elementary school districts are facing are the low enrollment, which they said one of the reasons was the low birth rate. So it's interesting to see how that'll play out. And I also attended the South Bay City's Council of Government, the Board of Directors meeting. It was my first meeting as the voting delegate, so very interesting. We also had a presentation on SB 50 and a few others, which the mayor from Redondo Beach presented. And so far, I believe City of Lawndale, City of Hawthorne, and City of Redondo Beach all are opposing it, and I think a few more cities are looking into it. And with that, I'll pass it along.
Mayor Pro Tem Osborne.
Thank you, Robert. I attended the Contract Cities meeting that Councilmember Reed attended at City Hall in downtown LA. It was very interesting. And also attended the COG meeting that Bernadette was just describing, and she did a great job. She nailed them with some hard questions. Should have been proud of her.
Very good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, I too attended the State of the School Districts, which was a combined meeting of our 3 districts that, well, 3 districts, I should say. Hawthorne District, Centinela Union High School District, as well as the Lawndale Elementary School District. And I did, you're right, they did kind of comment that the enrollment is down for a few reasons, and one of which is the low birth rate. But I had to remind them that I did my part. So, yeah, I certainly did my part to try to get the birth rate up. I want to make sure our school districts have enough students. And so only 3, only 3. So it's not like I have 10. Okay, but it was a very, very well informed meeting. And it was unique because the 3 school districts took turns basically giving, insight on what's going on at their school district or what have you. You got 4? Oh, Lennox was there too as well, right? Yeah, Lennox it was definitely there. There was one missing. That's why I forgot there was one missing this year that's no longer part of the pack. And that was Wiseburn. I also attended the Little League. We attended Little League. The Little League opening day with Councilman Pat Kearney. I have to say that the program has really grown from last year.
From 16 to what, 12 now?
For 12, yeah. 12 teams. And a lot of people showed up, a lot of parents showed up, and it was really nice. And the weather was, you couldn't beat the weather. And I also attended the South Bay Association of Realtors, local elected officials reception as well. I think that was yesterday or 2 days ago, maybe. It was Thursday, I've been told. Okay, with that, that's all I have. And we are now
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I apologize. I did have one more item that slipped my mind. Okay. I met with one of our local business owners who was having an issue with a contractor and have talked with them. I've also talked with Sean Moore. We had gone through and done when do I need a permit for our residents? I requested that we do the same thing for our businesses. We have contractors out there that will simply tell you you don't need a permit and bypass all the process just to get their money and get out the door. And they know, we know that leaves our businesses and our residents holding with the issues. So just wanted to bring that forward as well.
Yes, thank you. Okay, we have exhausted our calendar. We do have one other business tonight, and that's a closed door session with conference with our legal counsel. I'm going to ask the city attorney to give us a provision for which we would go under.
The city council will meet in closed session on one item as agendized as L9 because there is exposure to litigation in one matter. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to stand for recess and go into closed session. Okay, we have returned from closed session. We're going to ask the city attorney to give us a report of the closed session.
The city council met in closed session on one item of anticipated litigation. The council was updated, no reportable action. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam City Attorney. The next regular scheduled meeting of the Lawndale City Council will be held at 6:30 p.m. on Monday, April the 15th in the Lawndale City Council chambers. It is now 7:59. This meeting is adjourned.